Male concubines were dressed in silk, fed the finest foods, and heard the secrets of the most powerful men alive. But they were prisoners in a gilded cage, where their only value was their youth, and their only future was to be thrown away. This is the tragic, untold story of the male concubines of the Roman Empire. First things first, we need to throw out our modern ideas about love and sexuality. In Rome, relationships weren't about orientation. They were about power. Roman society was built on a brutal hierarchy, and that extended right into the bedroom. The main dynamic was active versus passive, dominant versus submissive. A freeborn Roman man proved his masculinity, his virtus, by being the dominant partner. As long as he took that active role, he could have sexual relationships with men or women without any social backlash. Acceptable partners were always from a lower status: slaves, former slaves, and entertainers. They were seen as objects for pleasure, not equals. And this is where the concubinist, the male concubine, enters the picture. The term itself just means male bed companion, but that neutral definition hides a terrifying reality. He was chosen for his beauty and youth, existing in a world completely separate from the protections of marriage or even formal concubinage. For these men and boys, a relationship wasn't a partnership. It was a form of servitude. Their lives were not their own. They were totally dependent on the whims of their masters, living proof of a master's power to take whatever and whoever he wanted. From the outside, you think the life of an emperor's favorite concubinist was a dream. They lived in palaces surrounded by unimaginable wealth. They were draped in fine fabrics, perfumed with exotic oils, and ate from the same table as the most powerful men in the world. They were living, breathing works of art, meant to show off their master's exquisite taste and endless resources. For the most favored boys, this sometimes meant a formal education. They were taught to sing, play music, or hold an intelligent conversation, making them insiders who were privy to the secrets of the imperial court. It was a dizzying rise from the filth of a conquered province or the misery of a slave market. But all this luxury was a lie. It wasn't a gift. It was the architecture of their prison. Every silk robe, every fine meal, every whispered secret was just another chain binding them closer to their master. It isolated them, making the world outside the palace walls seem alien and terrifying. They were taught that their survival depended entirely on their master's favor. Their value was tied directly to their beauty and their ability to please. This created a constant, gnawing anxiety. What happens when a new favorite is chosen? What happens when their youth inevitably fades? The gilded cage was beautiful, but its bars were made of fear, and the door was always locked from the outside. Beneath that shiny surface was a foundation of brutal exploitation. A concubinist was, in the eyes of Roman law and society, property. He had virtually no rights, no agency, and no control over his own body. The Roman concept of impudicitia, sexual shamelessness, was a crime if a freeborn man willingly took the passive role. But for a slave, taking that role was seen as a necessity, a part of his total subjugation. This meant they were subject to the absolute and often violent whims of their masters. Their entire existence was a performance of submission, and any failure to please could bring severe punishment. They were walking symbols of their master's power, living proof that he could remake reality to suit his desires, even to the point of redefining gender itself. The psychological toll was immense. Stripped of their names, families, and identities, they were molded into objects of desire. Older servants and eunuchs would teach them the rules of survival: how to move, when to speak, and how to endure abuse without a word of protest. They lived in a state of constant vulnerability, where the line between pleasure and pain, ceremony and abuse, simply didn't exist. Love and affection, as we know them, were irrelevant. The relationship was built on a terrifying imbalance of power, and that power could be asserted at any moment, in any way the master chose. For centuries, these stories have been buried by history. If you believe these forgotten voices deserve to be heard, take a moment to like this video and subscribe for more hidden histories. Your support helps drag these dark corners of the past into the light. Nowhere is the tragic reality of the concubinist clearer than in the court of Emperor Nero. Nero's cruelty was legendary, and his treatment of his male concubines became a public spectacle of his absolute power. His most famous favorite was a young boy named Sporus, who was said to look strikingly like Nero's dead wife, Poppaea Sabina. In a fit of what some ancient historians called madness, Nero ordered Sporus to be castrated, a brutal act meant to permanently preserve his youthful, feminine features. Nero then married Sporus in a public ceremony, with a dowry and a bridal veil. He made Sporus dress as an empress and insisted people call him lady and mistress. This wasn't a marriage of love. It was a shocking display of power. Nero was showing the world that he could not only control a person's life, but could violently reshape their very identity. He didn't stop there. Nero also married another man, a freedman named Pythagoras, but in that ceremony, Nero himself took the role of the bride, wearing the veil. This horrified the Roman elite. It was one thing to dominate a slave. It was another for an emperor, the symbol of Roman manhood, to publicly put himself in the submissive role. While Nero's relationships were about cruelty, the story of Emperor Hadrian and his lover Antinous is often seen as a tragic romance. Antinous, a Greek youth of incredible beauty, was Hadrian's constant companion. When Antinous tragically drowned in the Nile, Hadrian was overcome with a grief so deep it was considered unmanly by his peers. He declared Antinous a god, named a city after him Antinopolis, and ordered hundreds of statues of him made across the empire. And while genuine affection was almost certainly there, the power imbalance was too. Antinous' life and legacy were still completely defined by the emperor who loved him. He was a beloved object, but an object nonetheless. For a concubinist, the greatest fear wasn't just violence, it was becoming irrelevant. Their whole world was built on the fleeting foundation of youth and beauty. As they aged, they faced the terrifying prospect of being discarded. The favor of a powerful man is a fickle thing, and once it was lost, their fall from grace was swift and brutal. So what happened to a concubinist who grew too old or was replaced by a younger rival? There was no retirement plan, no honorable discharge. While a rare few might be freed and given a new life, most could be sold off, demoted to manual labor in the palace, or simply abandoned. After a life of enforced softness and luxury, they were completely unprepared for the harsh realities of the world. The fate of Sporus after Nero's death is a chilling example. No longer the empress, he became a spoil of war, passed between powerful men trying to claim a piece of Nero's legacy. He was taken first by the Praetorian prefect Nymphidius Sabinus, and then by Otho, who also became emperor. Finally, the Emperor Vitellius planned to use Sporus in a public spectacle, forcing him to play a role in a gladiatorial show that was meant to end in his public rape and humiliation. Facing this final horror, Sporus chose the only escape he had left. He took his own life. His tragic end highlights the brutal truth. A concubinist was a disposable commodity whose life had no value once his master was gone. The lives of male concubines in the Roman Empire hold up a dark mirror to the grandeur of Rome. They reflect a society obsessed with power, domination, and status, where human beings could be reduced to beautiful, silent objects. Theirs was a world of gilded misery, where every luxury was a reminder of their powerlessness, and every whisper of affection was laced with the threat of violence. Their stories were deliberately silenced, erased from a history written by the very men who used and discarded them. By uncovering their stories, we're forced to confront a much more complex and disturbing picture of the Roman world, and to ask a timeless question. What is the true cost of absolute power? And who are the forgotten people forced to pay the price? What other hidden stories from history should we uncover next? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more journeys into the forgotten corners of the past. Thanks for watching.